Gas, constipation, bloating, diarrhea, bowel problems are so common in people that suffer with multiple sclerosis. And it's very important to talk about this topic because there is a way that we can resolve this. We don't have to live like this. It really limits our social life. It really causes a lot of pain and grief. And you're going to learn some amazing insights as to why so many people with multiple sclerosis have bowel problems. And it's so important to treat it not only just to get our quality of life improved, but also because the parasites are causing the bowel problems, but they're also causing the multiple sclerosis. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And it is such a pleasure for me to talk about this because I was diagnosed with MS over 30 years ago. And I've been able to live MS free from what I've learned, what I'm going to teach you. But also I've had the amazing privilege to coach over 700 wellness champions in the Live Disease Free Academy. And what I can say with you is that what the research shows that all these bowel issues are common in MS. Yes, they certainly are. But the way that the multiple sclerosis standard of care or our experts, the medical experts that are treating us, what they would say is that the neurological damage because of the MS, because of those lesions, it's really causing a discommunication between our central nervous system, our brain, and our colon, our intestines, and that's what's causing it. And I don't believe that that is true for the vast majority of people because we're seeing people, our wellness champions, they are resolving all of these horrible digestive problems, the bladder, or sorry, not the bladder, we've talked about that before, but the bowel issues. So really important topic. So number one is so that we can get back to enjoying our quality of life. And number two, it is so important to treat these parasites because that is part of the recovery process. Yes, the recovery process of recovering from MS. So in this video, I'm sharing with you evidence, both scientific evidence, like what we know about parasites, and also what the experiences of our students have been in treating these parasites and getting their healthy bowel function back again. So again, with multiple sclerosis, it is believed by our medically trained experts that it's the damage to the nerves because of those lesions in our central nervous system that is causing all of our bowel issues that we're dealing with. But again, the truth is that, and what I'd like you to do is share with me if you feel comfortable, because I know that this is more of a private topic. Some people don't like to talk about it, but I will share my own personal experience too. And share with me, like, did you have bowel issues, bowel problems before the MS or after the MS? For the vast majority of people, we've had bowel issues for years and years before we were diagnosed with MS or other chronic diseases. For myself, I remember as a very young girl, maybe 12 years old, not having a bowel movement for several days at a time. I remember as a young adult in college, maybe having a bowel movement once a week. So the constipation for me, the stomach pain, if I ate the wrong foods, the gas, all of that was way years before I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 28. And of course, we've talked already in the past, I've done videos on why that is so. The overuse of antibiotics, yes, Joanne, absolutely, for myself too. That's really what throws the whole balance off, and it really devastates our health promoting microbes. And then we have too many bad microbes, and we're going to talk about those today. So for most of us, it has been that we had gut issues, we've had these bowel issues before we were diagnosed with MS or other chronic diseases. And that's very, very important because that helps us to see that it's not necessarily the MS that's causing it, but it is part of why we came down with MS, why we became diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Everything that I share with you is solely for educational purposes. It's really important that you don't take what I'm sharing with you on these videos for advice that I'm giving you, because I don't know you personally, and I would hate for you to just think you're dealing with just mild constipation and you use certain, we're going to talk about how to resolve it, but we can have obstructions, we can have blockages from these parasites. So you have to work with someone. I do help students in the Live Disease Free Academy, but whoever you decide to work with, you just have to really make sure that you use this as just information that helps you to get the care that you need. I know with some of the students that I've worked with, like, we can become so constipated that the stool becomes like these hard stones or pebbles, and they can just kind of clump together. And I've literally had one student saying that she had to literally try to pull it out of her because she was so impacted with her stool. And that is not good, right? That is really, our intestines are where we have a lot of absorption of our nutrition. And so when we have a lot of the dysbiosis, we have a lot of the disease causing parasites, that's what's causing these bowel issues, bowel problems, then we end up with having, like, the integrity of the lining of our intestines becomes inflamed, and mucus and breakdown and leaky gut, and we're not absorbing nutrition, and the parasites are freeloaders and they're eating a lot of nutrition. So that is such an important part of our body, because that's really where the nutrition from our food is transferred into our body. And so we have to correct that. So again, this is for educational purposes. So how can I tell if I have constipation? If we don't have a daily bowel movement, like myself when I was a young girl, if we find that we have to sit on the toilet for a long time before we are able to have a bowel movement, it should not take that long. We should maybe have a sense of it and go to the bathroom and within a few minutes have a bowel movement. If we find that the stool is not, and it's fun talking about stool, but it should be well formed. It should not be really thick, maybe about that thick, maybe like an inch thick kind of thing, if that's about an inch, and at least probably about upwards of a foot long per day, maybe 6 foot stool, not 6 foot, 6 inches, sorry. So like up to a foot. So like some people will have 2 or 3 bowel movements per day, and they would be about total of about a foot of the stool. So that's what we're looking at. And sometimes when we're sick, when we have these parasites, we end up, like I said, with these stones, with these pebbles. We can end up tearing and having bleeding, hemorrhoids, and all of this is part of it. And this is all part of MS. And there's lots that we can do about it. And we're going to talk about that at the end. So we should be able to be having a daily bowel movement, at least 1 or 2 or 3 per day. And we shouldn't have to sit for a very long period of time on the toilet. We shouldn't have to push hard. All of these things are really important. It should just, our body, like the normal cramping that we have, we just should be able to do it naturally and not strain ourselves. And we shouldn't have a lot of gas and bloating. A lot of gas is caused by fermentation. And the fermentation is when certain microbes are fermenting or eating sugars and carbs, and they are turning it into gas. So we don't want a lot of that. We shouldn't have a lot of that if we have enough of the healthy microbes. Also, do I have bowel urgency? That's another problem. So sometimes when we're sick, we will have constipation and then it'll turn into diarrhea. So we might be backed up, and then we'll have diarrhea. Or some of us will have more diarrhea than constipation. So I believe this has to do with which types of parasites we're dealing with in the intestines. So some of the common causes of constipation, this is what they're telling us. And yes, there is some truth to it. Like if we don't exercise at all, it definitely will slow things down. And it's true that if we're disabled, it's really hard to do a lot of physical activity. So exercise is important. Drinking enough water is important. We know certain medications can definitely make us more constipated. And then, of course, what our standard of care is saying, that it's damage to the nerves that is causing the constipation. But I really don't believe that like when we talk like that, then it really doesn't give us a lot of hope that there's much we can do. And in our experience working with the wellness champions, we found that huge ability to reverse this and to get normal, healthy bowel function back again. and what causes bowel urgency. So again, this is not the direct cause, it is parasites, but we can definitely have diarrhea, which will make us extremely urgent. We can have leaky stool. And again, they talk about damage to the nerves. That's what we get from our standard of care. Now this is the fascinating part. Like, this is so common sense that, number one, parasites are abundant in our environment. We don't have to go to a third world country. They are in our soil. They are in our pets. They are on the produce that comes to us from different countries. They're on, if we eat out in a restaurant and somebody can pass it on if they don't wash their hands, or maybe it's on the produce that didn't get washed well enough. They're everywhere. We can't avoid it. And the really important thing is that we want to make sure that we are building up a healthy defense inside of us. Number one, knocking back those parasites, building back the good microbes, and then just living a healthy lifestyle. So a few common parasites that we'll talk about. Let's first say what a parasite is. A parasite is any microorganism that causes us harm. So that is not just worms. That can be different types of fungi. That can also be different types of worms and single-celled protists and bacteria. So I'm just going to scratch the surface on a few different microbes, not a lot of them, because we could be here for hours and hours. There's at least 200,000 worms that can cause disease in humans. So we're not going to talk about that many. We'll talk about a few different things. So number one, fungus. Many of you may be familiar with Candida, which is a type of fungus. It's a yeast. It's a type of fungus. And one of the very, very common symptoms is constipation. And constipation is probably 50 to 75% of people that are diagnosed with MS will suffer with constipation. So that's probably the most common. But we could also have irritable bowel, and we could have, I just wanted to share the name because you may have heard this before, but your healthcare provider may have called it neurogenic bowel dysfunction. And again, that is just basically talking about the symptom, but not really telling you what the cause is. But we could have gas, bloating, irritable bowel, urgency, so diarrhea, constipation. All of these different things are common with multiple sclerosis. So Candida can cause stomach pain. It can cause constipation. It can cause diarrhea, gas, bloating. If you think about if you've ever made bread before and you add to a little bit of warm water, you add the yeast and you add a little bit of sugar first and then add the yeast, and you see that bubbling up, and that is fermentation. And that's what yeast does when it's given certain food, like the carbohydrates. That's what it loves, the sugar, for example. So when we eat those foods and we have a lot of Candida in our intestines, then we can have a lot of gas and bloating. But that's true for bacteria and for other parasites too, and can cause nausea. So when we have a lot of fungal overgrowth in the intestines, we can have a lot of bowel issues. Aspergillus is a type of mold, so it's a different type of fungus, but again, it can cause abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, and it can also create a mass in our intestines. And then looking on to other ones, so let's go on to single-celled parasites. I'm just going to talk about three of them. So one of them would be Giardia, and Giardia causes nausea, vomiting, malabsorption of our food, diarrhea, and weight loss. Some of you may have heard of toxoplasmosis, which is a single-cell parasite that we would get from the feces from our cats, but also we can get it from undercooked meat. It can cause diarrhea, abdominal pain, nausea, and vomiting. And then amoeba, so different types of amoebas, they can cause the intestinal ulcers, bloody diarrhea, weight loss, fever, gastrointestinal obstruction. So that's where there's a blockage. And then let's look at the worms. So there's pinworms, which can cause stomach pain, and there's hookworms, which can cause abdominal pain, intestinal cramps, nausea, blood in the stool, constipation, and diarrhea. Roundworms, abdominal discomfort or pain, constipation, diarrhea, IBS, intestinal blockage, which causes pain and nausea and vomiting and loss of appetite. And tapeworms also. Tapeworms can cause nausea, loss of appetite, abdominal pain, diarrhea, or constipation. You'll see a lot of these worms can cause diarrhea or constipation. And gastrointestinal schistosomiasis, so that is a flatworm that often will infect our bladder, but it can also infect the intestines, causing abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, and blood in the stool. Intestinal flukes, I'm sure I've passed intestinal flukes and roundworms. Abdominal pain, diarrhea, but it could also be constipation, malabsorption, and you could, if it gets out of hand, intestinal obstruction again. So you can see a pattern here that there are a lot of different types of parasites that can cause very similar bowel problems. And that is the biggest challenge in recovering from MS or other chronic diseases, because it's not always just one type of worm, one type of single cell protozoa, one type of fungus, one type of bacteria that can be causing the bowel issues and directly or indirectly causing the neurological symptoms of the disease we're dealing with also. But it is so important to address this again so that we are able to open up our social life and be able to venture out of our home more, but also because this bowel dysfunction, the bowel problems are intimately linked with what's causing MS, and that is the parasites. The parasites in the bowel that are causing the bowel problems are causing the symptoms of multiple sclerosis also, directly and indirectly. So sometimes they move into the blood, they move into the central nervous system, but there is a big base camp in our intestines that needs to be treated. So how do we resolve this? So I have the Live Disease Free Academy, which is a 90-day program. And in the prep phase, getting ready to treat these parasites, we definitely want to get the bowels moving. We want to address the constipation. So if we are not, like if we're just working with standard of care, often we are encouraged to use laxatives and stool softeners. And they may help for a while, but what you'll find is that it's going to require more and more of the laxative to do the same amount of work. Our intestines become lazy, which is a real problem. So that's not the answer. The answer is we have to treat what's causing the constipation. It's so common to have this. It's shocking. So what we do is the steps that we take to resolve the bowel problems, issues, all of these issues is, number one, we stop feeding those different types of parasites. So they all thrive on carbohydrates and simple sugar. So we decrease that significantly using the Live Disease Free diet. We have a playlist in the Live Disease Free YouTube channel, and you can, for the eating plan for the Live Disease Free diet, and you can go there and watch it. You can start to implement. We have a Live Disease Free community on Facebook where you can get a little download of a cheat sheet of what you should eat and what you should avoid. But that already makes a significant symptom improvement in people that have MS by just decreasing the carbs a lot. Huge. And so then what we do is we support the body. So this is where we make sure that our students are having daily bowel movements before they are starting to address the parasites. Because if you start killing them, treating them, and then they start to rot inside of you, that's not a good thing. They carry heavy metals, they carry all kinds of other microbes. You need them out as soon as possible. So what we do is something as simple as oxy powder. There's a couple of different oxy powders on the market. The one that I recommend is just ozonated magnesium, and you can find that on livediseasefree.com under shops to make sure you get the right one. So it's oxy powder. It works really well. And don't follow the bottle dose. And again, this is all for educational purposes. If you have something really serious, you need to work with a doctor. But if it's just mild constipation, something like that, it's not going to feed the infections like some other supplements would. It's not going to make the colon lazy. It's just going to help move things along until you start to treat. And then students find that as they do this, as they first of all stop feeding the infections, feel a lot better, then they start to just support their body in various ways, including daily bowel movements, sleeping well, supporting physiology, cleaning up things in their environment. And then they start treating, and people have shared with me that for the very first time in their life, they are having normal bowel movements. So for many of us, like, we can trace this back to before the age of 10, when we really went out of balance with our microbes and we started to have too many parasites in our intestines and started to have bowel problems then. And that was way before we were diagnosed with our autoimmune disease. So it's very important to, number one, stop feeding them. Number two, to get the bowels moving, support the body, and then to treat them. And what we have found is that if somebody doesn't have chronic disease, they could totally use different herbs that are anti-parasitic, antifungal herbs. Absolutely. But for people with chronic disease, and also people that have larger worms, so people that may not have autoimmune, but they just have had a lot of gut issues, there's real benefit, real help in incorporating the parasite drugs, because some of those larger worms, the herbs that we're taking, they're just not effective enough to get rid of all of the large worms. We use the herbs in conjunction with the parasite drugs, but we don't use them in place of, because we're not getting the same results. So we use an oxidizing agent. So sometimes you can do things rectally with oxygen type therapies, which will help to get directly to part of the problem. That's just going to reach part of your large intestines, but not your small. And so we treat from the top down and from the bottom up. And if you want to see some of the parasites that our students have passed, the roundworms, the really huge worms, just watch the infection playlist on YouTube, Live Disease Free. I have a few different videos there. I have hundreds of pictures of worms, like hundreds. So what I know is that the people that are diagnosed with MS, ALS, PLS, Parkinson's are infested with big and small parasites. That is what's causing their bowel issues. That is what's causing the gas, the constipation, the pain, the diarrhea, all of that, intermittent, IBS, all of it is causing all of it. And as you treat them, you start to have normal, healthy digestion and bowel function. Awesome. So I'm just going to see, I think there is something wrong with my, I'm not seeing your comments, unfortunately. I don't know why, but unfortunately, I'm not seeing any comments. I hope that you guys can hear me and see me. So what I would suggest for you to do is to put your comments below in the video, and we will answer them, because I can't see them and I'm really sorry. I don't know why. But put your comments below. Let me know, like, is this something that you've had in the past, that you've had different types of bowel issues before the MS? That's because other people can see. It's like, yes, wow, this person did, this person did. So then we can start to say, well, maybe it's not true that we're dealing with these issues because of the MS. Maybe these bowel problems happened before and they are what's causing the MS. It's the parasites that cause the bowel problems that are causing the MS. And really, that's the truth of the matter, because wellness champions are recovering. If you want to listen to some of their stories, their successes, go to livediseasefree.com. You can listen, you can hear them. You'll have tears in your eyes. It's so amazing. I also have some on YouTube, Live Disease Free on YouTube. There's a few that have shared their stories up there. And that's how I have been able to live MS free for over 30 years. So what I would encourage you to do is to learn about the infection, start to change your diet, make sure to use something. So we found, again, you can use magnesium citrate from health food stores and drug stores, but we found that that often is not strong enough. We found that oxy powder works way better, and vitality capsules are great by Dr. McDaniel. I believe her name is Jennifer Daniels, maybe. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, but it's vitality capsules is great. And so either one of those two. But the key is that you can't just rely on trying to get the bowels to keep moving. You've got to treat the parasites, because that way you won't need the aids anymore. If you're dealing with diarrhea, what we found is that when you start following the Live Disease Free diet, it's very important to look at the cheat sheet and only eat the vegetables that agree with you. And it's fine to steam, saute, oven roast, or stir fry your vegetables. Just listen to your body. Don't eat too many raw if that triggers you because of the inflammation, because of the parasites. as you are healing the gut, you'll notice you'll be able to eat raw again eventually, but not until you have corrected the microbiome well enough. So I think that gives you enough information. So again, the oxy powder, we found that to be the most helpful for people that have chronic disease. And I think it says on the bottle to start with 4. I wouldn't start with 4. We would take it at night before bed. And you might want to start with, if you're not that constipated, like 1. If you're quite constipated, start with 2, and you can always increase it by 1 more. The vitality capsules are great also, but it's that simple. Just stop feeding infections, support the body, get the bowels moving, and start treating. And as you treat and treat and treat, the bowels just work better and better again. They start to go back to normal. The body is amazing. And then important to bring back the good microbes that were devastated by antibiotics at some point in our life. And we do that through fermented foods. We prefer the raw sauerkraut. That seems to work really well. Start small amounts. Homemade is always the best, but that is a really great way, especially if you get organic vegetables. And if you're able to ferment organic vegetables yourself at home, it's so tasty, so delicious. But if you're short on time, you will be able to find it in stores. So again, we're bringing down the bad microbes, the disease-causing parasites that are causing all of these bowel issues, including candida and different types of fungi and bacteria. I didn't even talk about the bacteria, but I just shared enough with you that I believe that you have enough of an understanding of the vast different types of parasites that can cause these issues in multiple, the bowel problems, because I did talk about bladder in a different video. So this is the bowel problems. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. Take care and bye-bye for now.